All right, guys, the NBA Finals are upon us. We have covered them from a bunch of different angles so far leading up to Game 1 tomorrow night, but I have SBR's own Jordan Sharp on the line right now to discuss some trends regarding home court advantage in this series. Now, Jordan, we all know how well Golden State has played at home this year, going 7-1 in the playoffs as well. Is that something you expect to continue in these finals?
Well, Matt, thanks for having me. Yeah, the Warriors, have been pretty successful so far, only dumping one of those games at home to the Memphis Grizzlies. But I think we can expect them to at least hold court here straight up in the NBA Finals. That Oracle Arena crowd is just absolutely amazing. I think against the spread, though, is a little bit of a different question. The Warriors have not been great against the spread at home so far for these playoffs. Only 3-5 against the spread at home, dumping a couple of those games against the Pelicans where they were way overvalued against the Pelicans team coming in that was still pretty solid. The sportsbooks really didn't give them much of a chance, but also, of course, against the Memphis Grizzlies weren't too successful against the spread. Really, it wasn't until the Rockets series that they actually kind of hit their stride betting against the spread here. So with with them favored about, I think it's 5.5, 6.5 points here against the Cavs in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, I think the sportsbooks have kind of finally hit their stride with the Warriors here. So I think we can expect them to continue to hold serve at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I do expect them to be up 2-0 as we head back to Cleveland in the series for Game 3.
Yeah, I think something that's going to continue too, Jordan, especially considering the Cavs' road winning percentage this year was only 46%. Now, however, in the playoffs, they have upped their winning percentage to 85.5% of their away games. Now, I do think their opponents were generally weaker than Golden State's, but is their road prowess enough to offset how good the Warriors are at home?
I don't think so. I think you hit the nail on the head when we were talking about that the Cavs have played much weaker competition. If you compare the three teams that the Cavs beat compared to the three teams the Warriors beat, there's absolutely no comparison between the Pelicans, Grizzlies, and Rockets compared to the Celtics, Bulls, and Atlanta Hawks. I mean, the Celtics, they were pretty much, just a giveaway series for the Cleveland Cavaliers, easily swept them. The Bulls at least put up some sort of a fight, but we all saw that they were dealing with some internal struggles. We saw that obviously Tom Thibodeau's been fired, and there was a lot of tension on that team. It didn't seem like they were gelling very well, so that's understandable. And then the Hawks, I mean, they just completely fell apart. Had some injuries too, obviously, but that's really no excuse for how badly they laid down against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So no, I don't take too much of the Cavs' road prowess here so far into account. I think Oracle Arena is a much tougher place to play, probably than any other place, other maybe with the exception of the United Center, but I'd still put Oracle Arena as a tougher place to play. It's a long series, obviously. There's a lot of layoffs, which I think could help the Cavs a little bit on the road because there is a 2-day layoff in between Game 1 here on Thursday night and Game 2 on Sunday. That maybe could help the Cleveland Cavaliers a little bit, but I'm not taking it too much into account when I handicap this series because obviously it's a much different opponent than what the Cavaliers have faced so far.
All right, Jordan. Now, while these numbers are important, I don't think they tell the whole story. They're not giving us the whole picture. Now, statistically speaking, this season was the lowest for home court winning percentage in the entire history of the NBA. Personally, I think this can be chalked up to a few things. First of all, teams relying more on the three-pointers. Second of all, media scrutiny making it more difficult for the hometown refs to influence games. However, the thing that I see the most differences is the fans that are at these games. I remember going to games, watching games as a kid, and the crowd was full of drunken middle-class fans, real angry fans. They cared. Now, all I see are socialites, businessmen on their phones tweeting about the game, drinking Bloody Marys, eating hot dogs, just hanging out. There must still be a reason for Golden State's home success, but with home court advantage dwindling league-wide, do you see it as something that would sway your opinion on this series?
Well, you bring up some interesting points, too. And one thing I forgot to mention is the Warriors' scoring at home has been down as well, which could play a factor into this series. But you're right. I mean, I think road teams won just over 42% of the games played this season, which is amazing. I mean, that number has gone up, at least 10% in the last 15, 20 years. So, there has been changes. I think the three-point shot you bring up is a very, very big factor. And obviously the Warriors shoot a lot of them. So maybe that will, cause them to not get as many calls at home as normally happened in, earlier days in the NBA where there were less threes shot, more contact being made. The game not as fluent as it is these days, with a lot more, heavy-handed defense, so to speak. But the Cavs' defense has been good these playoffs. Let's not forget that. That is going to play a big factor, I think, in whether or not the home court advantage is as solid as it has been for the Warriors in this one. If the Cavs continue to play defense like they have been, granted, it has been against weaker opponents, but their numbers still have been solid regardless of who they've played. It could have an effect on home court advantage in this series. And obviously the biggest wild card in the entire NBA is LeBron James, who could easily take over a series and cause a split for the Warriors and take back home court advantage heading back to Cleveland for games 3 and 4. But I still am not handicapping this series based on what has happened. I'm handicapping it as to how these two teams match up against one another and to what each team is going to want to do to one another. And every time I look at it, it still comes down to whether or not, what the Warriors are going to do, on defense. And I think that overall in the end, I'm still going with the Warriors because they are the better team in this series. And, home court advantage does play a factor, but it's as you said, it's shrinking, and it's still not a big enough play here, even as good as the Cavs have been on the road, to sway me one way or the other way here in this series.
All right, Jordan, listen, I want to thank you for coming on, sharing all that research and insight on these finals.
All right, thanks, Matt. It's good talking to you.
Good talking to you, too. And remember, guys, we are going to be continuing our coverage of the NBA Finals from now until Game 7, so keep it locked right here at SBRvideo.com and stay informed.